This is Dr. Wanda Montalvo, the Executive Director for Jonas Nursing and Veteran Healthcare. And I want to quickly introduce our speaker for today, and then I am going to punt over to my colleague, Dr. Althea Hicks, to provide an introductory video and highlights of Jonas Nursing and Veteran Healthcare. Dr. Sheila Cox Sullivan serves as the nation's veterans as the Director of Research, Evidence-Based Practice and Analytics in the Office of Nursing Service for the Department of Veterans Affairs. And this is a great honor to have her. She's a great expert and colleague, and I've had a wonderful time getting to know her all through virtual introductions and meetings. In her role, she directs a team for innovating, educating, and supporting nurses throughout the VA in these areas. Dr. Sullivan's previous role in the VA includes Associate Nurse Executive and Research at the Central Arkansas Veterans Healthcare System and Associate Director for Associate Health Professions Education Evaluation. Prior to joining the VA, Dr. Sullivan served as faculty and associate dean at Harding University. Dr. Sullivan obtained her PhD from the University of Arkansas for medical science and her master's from the University of Virginia. She is a very seasoned researcher who has several manuscripts and has also contributed to book chapters. She participates in multiple national advisory committees, including National Institute of Nursing Research, the American Nurses Association, Sigma Theta Tau, and the Organization of Nursing Leadership. And she is very much involved also in looking at healthcare issues on a global basis. So we welcome Dr. Sheila Sullivan to our webinar today. I'm going to punt over to Althea.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to our webinar entitled Nursing Research Opportunities at the Department of Veterans Affairs. We just like to make sure that you're aware that this webinar is being recorded, and we thank you for joining us in our webinar series of Jonas Nursing and Veterans Healthcare. We're the signature program of Jonas Philanthropies, founded by Donald and Barbara Jonas, and our program works in partnership with schools of nursing across the country to identify and invest in high potential doctoral nursing scholars. We're the first and only privately funded program in the nation with a presence in all 50 states, and we're focused on a commitment to the nursing profession and veterans healthcare with over 1,200 scholars funded to date. Please be sure to follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn at Jonas Philanthropies, on Twitter at Jonas Impact, and on our website at jonasphilanthropies.org. And feel free to visit our website, which has our media library and our list of upcoming events. As a reminder, again, the webinar is entitled Nursing Research Opportunities at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Please use your chat function to submit your questions, and we will monitor and help moderate the session. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll hand it over now to Dr. Sheila Sullivan.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me on your call. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Catherine Rugen. She works in my office as the program manager for research, and so we wanted her to be on this call so you could become acquainted with her as well. Dr. Rugen, are you unmuted?
Yes, I am. Hello, everyone. Glad to be with you today.
So I'll go ahead and start the conversation with the slides. At the end of the presentation, what we would like for the learners to be able to do is to explain the framework of the Department of Veterans Affairs in the VA system, to be able to discuss the research opportunities in VHA, and to identify key resources for learning more about VHA research opportunities. So then the next slide would be the one with President Lincoln on it, because that is the originator of our VA motto, which is in bronze on the outside of our building here in Washington, D.C., and it is to care for those who shall have borne the battle and for their widow and their orphan. There is some discussion these days that's a little bit gender biased, but at the time it was historically accurate, and we have left it historically intact. The next slide, please. And I apologize for the difficulty with slide advancement. The internet is not allowing me to access Zoom. So many people are unaware of what the Department of Veterans Affairs looks like. They just think it's one big department, but I like for people to understand that it actually is three very separate, distinct, but of course interrelated parts. First of all, there's the Veterans Business Administration, and they are the ones that do things like VHA housing loans. They're the ones that make benefits determinations, the ones who provide veteran education funding after their service. And then on the other side is the National Cemetery Association. There are national cemeteries throughout the United States, some of the most famous ones being Arlington here in Washington, D.C., as well as the Punch Bowl, which is on the island of Oahu. But there are many in between. And the National Cemetery Administration determines who gets buried where. They actually provide a service at the funeral, which, it's not a 21-gun salute, but it is, in fact, a rifled salute, and uniformed individuals who will bear the casket and provide respect to the family. And then finally, in the middle there, you see the Veterans Health Administration, and that is where VA healthcare actually exists. It's not part of the business administration. And of course, we try to keep folks out of the Cemetery Association as long as possible. But we do have the Health Administration, which of course involves all levels and all types of care, from primary care to extended care, all the way. About the only thing we don't do is pediatrics and obstetrics, although we are providing a great deal of women's health. But when you introduce the baby into the situation, the VA says, we'll let you go outsource that one. So the mission statement for the Veterans Health Administration is similar but different. It's to honor America's veterans by providing exceptional health care that improves their health and well-being. And of course, veterans come in all shapes and sizes and colors and so forth, and so we are prepared to take care of all of them. But as you can imagine, that introduces its own unique set of challenges. We are, in fact, the largest United States healthcare system. There are about 8 million veterans enrolled in veterans health care. 5.5 million of them are actively receiving care as we speak, and 1 million veterans receive their care in the VA system on a weekly basis. This all takes place in 153 medical centers and 135 nursing homes. There are 895 outpatient clinics, and there are 209 veteran centers, which, although part of VHA, they are not part of the hospitals. They offer, it's not even health care, they just offer support. It might be food, it might be a place for meetings to happen so that it can look like and participate in healthcare, but that isn't really their purpose. As far as nursing in the Department of Healthcare Administration, we are 1/3 of the VHA workforce. There's over 67,000 registered nurses, and these numbers are hot off the press. 15,000 LPNs and 14,000 nursing assistants. We hire over 6,000 nurse practitioners, and it's important for me to share with you that as a system, we passed what we call full practice authority, so we invoked federal supremacy, which means that when you are working in a VA, you're actually on federal property. So we have the ability to use federal supremacy to say that the scope of practice for APRNs in the VA will be, they don't have to have license, they can function as licensed independent practitioners. They do not have to have affiliation agreements with physicians in order to function as practitioners. That includes nurse practitioners, clinical nurse specialists. You see we've got 285 of those. And fourth category of APRN is, of course, nurse midwives. And I'm proud to report that we do have one of those. Unfortunately, the certified registered nurse anesthetists were not included in the federal practice, our full practice authority directive, but we continue to hold forth hope that that will occur. We are a highly educated workforce nationwide. Nearly 3/4 of our RNs do hold a bachelor's degree. The number of RNs with master's degrees has increased to 22.7, so almost a fourth. And RNs with doctorates have nearly doubled in the same time period. in essentially 9 years. So we're very proud of that, and I think that we've really tried to adhere to the IOM recommendations as we're moving forward. As we move into the research portion of it, VA is the largest funding entity, following, of course, the National Institutes of Health. Our total VHA funding in 2018 was just a little over $670 million, and that's dispersed across 3,000 investigators with over 2,000 projects, and there are over 100 sites that are actively conducting research. This next slide is an overview of nursing research opportunities. Kathy, are you able to present these slides? Okay, not hearing her, I will continue, but if Kathy, you are able to join us, I would, there you are.
Sheila, I am here. Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
I have two phones going. Okay. So different funding mechanisms are available. For nurses specifically is the Nursing Research Initiative. We refer to that as our NRI. We have, the slide just kind of went a little too fast there. Yeah, I'm still on this one. Investigator-initiated projects. But back to the NRI, that is a mentored grant, and that is for new nurse researchers in the VA system. And then we also have also another mentored grant is the Career Development Awards. And we have various sections within the research office, whether it's, health services research or clinical laboratory research or, basic science research. They all have Career Development Awards. And then we have other various postdoctorate opportunities, such as the VA Quality Scholars and the VA Clinical Scholars. And the last listed there is our quality improvement funding stream called the Query. Next slide. So the Nursing Research Initiative, it's really to develop nurses as principal investigators to conduct independent research. So it is a mentored research grant. There's actually both pilot and full proposals that are funded. They're equivalent to the NIH Awards, K Awards. And really they focus on special populations, and you can see a variety of those listed there that are specific to our veteran population. But the focus of the NRI is really to identify, test, and implement nursing interventions that will enhance and prevent diseases in veterans across the spectrum of care. And next slide. And here's just an example of some of the currently funded Nursing Research Initiative grants. And you can see that there are over a wide variety of topical areas from, special populations with spinal cord injury to looking at, mental health medication issues, yoga for female veterans with PTSD. So really a wide variety of topical areas. Next slide. And so these are the various awards. So the CDA2 is a mid-level award. The CDTA is a transitional award for, someone who is getting more experienced and moving on to be a senior scientist, and that is the CDAEA is for the enhancement award, and that is for senior or career scientists within the VA system. And these are equivalent to NIH's K-22 award. I'm not seeing the slides move forward. Oh, there we go.
Do you need me to pick up, Kathy?
Yeah. Would you please?
No problem. We are having technical difficulties on our side, Jonas people. We're very sorry. So Kathy was telling you about the Career Development Awards, and they are, in fact, very similar to the K-22 to 24 awards that NIH provides. The key piece for that is that they are leveled so that as you grow in your career, there are continued opportunities for you to develop these clinical career development awards. The next slide talks about service-directed projects. The purpose of these projects is to implement and evaluate very specific program outcomes and strategies that are being used to enhance healthcare quality. So, for example, in our own office, we use what is called staffing methodology, which is a very evidence-based strategy for ensuring that there are the right number of nurses in the right place at the right time to provide good care to our veterans. We have a researcher in residence program that is being used right now to evaluate this program. So that would be one opportunity for you. So, of course, health services research is available, as well as, direct nursing science and bench and that type of research as well. But anyway, what this one does is it responds directly to the needs of the organization. So program offices vie for the ability to have researchers apply for these activities. The next slide speaks to our VA Quality Scholars. This one is a collaboration among the Office of Academic Affairs, the Office of Nursing Services, Dartmouth Institute, as well as the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation CUSIN program. That curriculum is expanded to provide an interprofessional perspective, so there aren't just nurses in this program. There are psychiatrists, psychologists, physicians, and other professional social workers who can be included. This program is a 2-year fellowship for pre- and postdoctoral nurses, both PhDs and DNPs. It is primarily focused, as I pointed out earlier, on quality and quality initiatives. Okay, sorry. There are 6 host sites, as you can see: Cleveland, White River, Nashville, Iowa City, San Francisco, and Birmingham. And there are 2 additional sites that will be added this year. Those have not yet been announced. We do have the Nursing Research Field Advisory Committee. The purpose of that Field Advisory Committee, as you can see, the mission that we developed and updated just this spring, is to build capacity for high-quality research led by VA nurse scientists to generate new knowledge and inform evidence-based practice that improves the health and well-being of veterans. So you can see we've tried to merge that into the, or fold that into the mission of VHA. So the specific aims then for our committee are to strengthen the nurse scientist workforce in VA. We are working diligently to provide job descriptions and opportunities for nurses at every facility in the nation, to increase funded research that is led by nurse scientists in the VA, to enhance knowledge dissemination and the visibility of VA nursing research, and then, of course, and VA nurse scientists.
Sheila, this is Wanda. We have a couple of questions that are come in.
Okay, sure.
Now or later?
No, let's go now. I don't like to leave unanswered questions.
So I personally have a quick question. When you look at the career development stages for nurses within the VA, can you give me a sense of what's the time frame post-graduation? How long are they in the workforce before they have these opportunities to move into this development track, and even the mentoring opportunity for research?
The NRI, the Nursing Research Initiative, and Kathy, please feel free to chime in if I misspeak, but the NRI you are eligible to apply for as soon as you have status in the VA. So if you're working at VA, you can write and apply for that grant, but it is a mentored grant. I cannot stress that enough, because what that means is you have to have a mentoring plan that's as well developed as your research plan, because they mean for you to become independent, or at least more independent, by the end of that grant, because you will learn not only, of course, about your studies, but you will learn how to manage a study. You will learn how to ensure that people are, implementing whatever you're trying to do with fidelity and those types of things. So it's more than just doing a study. It's really learning how to be a PI and doing that under the supervision of well-established researchers. One of them does need to be a nurse because obviously it's a nursing research initiative, but they don't all have to be. So if there are other types of researchers that are more supportive of the knowledge that you have, they just ask that you have one nurse to keep you focused on a nursing perspective. So then the next one, the CDA award, generally I think it's, the NRI runs for 1 or 2 years, and by the time you have finished that and you will learn quickly, listeners, that you are writing your next grant while you're finishing off the first one, because you've got to keep that funding stream going. So many times it can be 2 or 3 years in that you would start writing for your first CDA, and that runs for 3 to 5 years. So again, depending on how long you're funded, but they're generally about 5 years. So 5 years in, then you would be able to write for the mid-career award. And then the senior award, I believe, is for people, Kathy, isn't that 15 years in usually?
Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's for people who are approaching the level of senior researcher. That one is no longer mentored, although obviously you should have built a research team by then, and you would actually hopefully be doing some mentoring yourself at that point in time. Does that help, Wanda?
This is Kathy. I just wanted to add that there is a requirement to be a 5/8 VA employee to receive any of these funding streams. So it doesn't require, a full-time VA employment, but at least 5/8. Yeah.
So we also have 2 questions in the chat. One is for employment opportunities as a researcher that allows for telework, because the person's closest VA hospital is over an hour away from their home.
I can't speak for individual sites. I find it highly unusual that there would be somebody who would be allowed to telework as a researcher, because so much of that needs to be done face-to-face. That doesn't mean it can't happen. You would certainly just have to work with that agency and opportunities and see what they would permit you to do.
Okay, and then the
But
second.
I would not find that to be likely. I'll just say it that way.
Okay. And then the other one is the NRI webpage states applicants must be an active VA employee. Would researchers need to apply to the VA as a scientist or for a clinical position?
Oh, Kathy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Wanda, can you read that again? I kind of out on me.
Sure. That on the NRI webpage, the application states that the applicant must be an active VA employee. So would a researcher need to apply to the VA as a scientist or for a clinical position?
Well, I mean, if you apply for a clinical position, I mean, the only concern is what type of release time would you get to do research? So that would all have to be negotiated. We see some of our postdocs who are finishing up their postdoc, who are during their postdoc are writing their NRI grant and to kind of plan it to the time when they finish their postdoc that they would get funded, and then they have made agreements with the either the nursing service or the research service or their research center that if they do get funded, they would stay on as at least a 5/8 employee. They might share the other 3/8, like if someone's a clinician, a nurse practitioner, or an RN, that they would the other portion of their employment would be as a clinician. But that would all need to be negotiated.
And so the NRI award, does it cover the person's salary so that they can work in a research position?
No, none of these grants pay the salary.
Okay.
VA is not permitted to do that.
Okay. So it's a mentored position.
Right.
Okay, so it covers the person, kind of like the mentoring aspect of, and other resources, I guess, that are open to the researcher.
Correct. And that's another part of the experience, is learning to write and justify a budget.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, no more questions in the chat.
Okay, no, they were great questions. So the slide that I'm on now shows a website for the Office of Nursing Services, and it spotlights our VA nursing research page. This is on the intranet. So this is VA only that you're looking at right now. But you can see that it talks about, here's the opportunities for VA nursing research, other opportunities for funding. And then you can see there are spotlights as well as resources for nurse scientists, as well as nurse executives and students, so that we provide opportunities for you to be able to learn and see what's available to you as you go. If you are not part of the VA, that is less abundant on our internet site, although there is one. So on the next slide, you can see, well, Kathy, this is your face, so we should let you talk about this.
So, yeah, there I am. You hear my voice. There's my picture. So I am fairly new in my role. I've been with the Office of Nursing Services for the past 4 months, but I've been a VA nurse practitioner, nurse researcher for the last 23 years. So I facilitate the Nursing Research Field Advisory Group, and we rotate membership throughout nurse scientists in the VA. And our current chair of our group is Monica DiNardo, and she's from the Pittsburgh VA. And then our co-chair is Ursula Kelly from the Atlanta VA. And Ursula will be taking over for Monica when her term expires next March. And then we have about 15 members from various VA facilities across the nation who are members of this. And it's a 3-year membership, and we really work and have goal groups to address our goals and mission of this group. Next slide. Oh, and here we just highlight a couple of our nurse researchers. On your left-hand side, this is Dr. Monica DiNardo. What she has an NRI-funded research, and you can see that there on the slide. And then Dr. Sarah Krein, who's a senior scientist by the
it's the Association of Professionals in Infection Control and Epidemiology, APIC. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm reading off an iPhone, so thanks. I appreciate that. So just to highlight and give you some examples of some of the nurse researchers in the VA system. Next slide.
Yeah, other people who have been, there are in VA research in general, there have been Lasker Award winners, which is an extremely prestigious award. And also we had Dr. Chris Casper, who retired from the VA last year, won a Edge Runner Award from the fellow, or the Academy. So that was pretty exciting.
Right, and so we have approximately, it's hard to get the hold of the numbers, but we think our latest and most current numbers are over 300 PhD prepared nurse researchers in the VA system, and we have actually a total of about 2,400 doctorally prepared nurse researchers, including those with doctors of nursing practice degrees and other doctorate degrees, doctors of health administration and doctorate in education. So we do have a very highly educated and doctorally prepared workforce. And Sheila, I'll hand it back to you to wrap us up.
Right. So the take-home messages that we would like for you to get from this is, like I say, number one, understanding a little bit more about the structure of VA, so that when you hear some things on TV, you can say, oh, that's not the healthcare group. They're doing a good job. But also, obviously, to understand that there are myriad opportunities for growing as a researcher in VA. We talked specifically about those funding mechanisms that are available for nurses. We didn't really talk about the opportunity to work in some of the centers of excellence that are available. And you probably noticed that Dr. DiNardo was working among one of them. And that's a tremendous way to grow and be available for learning and working with a good team. There are research fellowships that are available. One of the things that we're working on right now is increasing that number. We'll just continue to work on it, but as I say, with 1/3 of the nursing workforce, I think it behooves us to move in that direction. And finally, you do have the opportunity, probably more easily than almost any other organization, to do multi-site research, because it isn't like you have to go recruit people that you don't already have a connection with, because, you know, VAs are very well interconnected. And with the onset of our new electronic health record, which is still in the process, but it's coming, I think it's going to be easier than ever to do multi-site research. So the final website, or excuse me, slide that we wanted to present to you is some internet sites. And again, I stress those are internet, not intranet. But these are, the Office of Nursing Services is obviously where I work, and that speaks to some of the opportunities that are offered, as we mentioned. The Office of Research and Development is where you will find information about research, who's allowed to be a PI, and the various and sundry handbooks that guide research. They're all the same as the common rule that other people follow, but because of VA structure and privacy requirements, there are pretty intricate rules that you're responsible for knowing and following. And then finally, the Office of Academic Affiliations is listed there because they're the ones that we would contact if you are interested in the quality or clinical scholars programs. And that is our last slide. Does anybody have any additional questions or interests that we can address?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we're starting to get, I encourage folks to submit questions via chat. I have a question. This is Wanda. How do you differentiate your VA clinical scholar from your VA quality scholar?
Kathy, I'll let you take that one.
The VA Quality Scholars is an interprofessional group that are located, I think the slide had 6, but there's actually been a few new sites that have been added. So that is, you focus on patient safety and quality improvement. So actually they have pre-doc and post-doc, and it's a 1 to 2 year program. And it focuses specifically on patient safety and quality improvement. It does not focus on research.
Okay.
It's not preparing you to be a researcher, whereas the clinical scholars is preparing PhD nurses to become researchers.
Okay. I have another question. Given the amount that is awarded within the VA system, what was it, $630 million for research, how much of that bucket is the Office of Nursing Service and Research and Development able to kind of earmark for nurse-led research?
The Office of Nursing Services is what we consider a policy office, and as such, we are not enabled to provide funding for research. What we do is provide support so that people can apply through these various mechanisms through ORD in order to get their funding.
Okay.
So I don't get that budget because of the way the system is set up. That being said, it's hard to really say what is quote unquote targeted for nursing, because you are allowed to apply for those career development awards, but so are many other people.
Right.
Money that is clearly earmarked for nurses and nurses only is primarily the Nursing Research Initiative, and of course it's a relatively small piece of the bucket.
Okay. One of the questions that came in through the chat is, I am about to start my clinical rotation this semester as a graduate DNP at the VA. I'm funded under the VA NAP, which I'm not sure what that means. Technically, I am a VA employee. Can I apply as a VA researcher to the VA, even though I am considered an NP student trainee?
This is Kathy. I'm a little confused by the question. I'm not sure what NAP means. So,
Is it the VANAP program?
no, that's the NNEI. So I'm not sure what NAP is
Okay.
referring to. But if that individual could just send me an email.
It's part of the VA Nursing Academic Partnership.
Oh, she's a VANAP.
Yeah.
It's VANAP.
Right.
Okay, all right. Okay, I thought it was just NAP, so that's why I didn't know what it was. So as part of the VANAP program, I mean, you're a student doing operations at the VA. So I guess, again, that is very specific to that one individual. And so for the sake of everyone else on the call, I would just ask that person to contact me, and we can discuss that. My email, Catherine, KATHRYN, .Rugen, RUGEN, @va.gov.
The other question I have, what are the opportunities for someone who works full-time outside of the VA, they're not really a VA employee, to consider opportunities for research collaboration with the VA population? Do you know of good models where you have, I guess, the civilian world partnering with the VA to conduct research?
Sure, that happens all the time at our academic affiliates. That the research has to be approved at the academic affiliate side and the VA side, but there is ability to recruit veterans from the VA into we'll just call it private sector or the affiliate research. That happens on a regular basis. I would refer the individual to their local research and development office for further discussion of that.
One of the questions I often see from, and for those that may or may not be familiar with the Jonas Nursing and Veterans, we currently have about 46 nurses that are pursuing DNP or PhD who have selected veteran healthcare as an area of focus. Some are working in the VA system and some are not. What do you perceive as opportunities for those that may not be employees of the VA system? How do you navigate that and pursue a research career in your setting? What might be some tips for overcoming maybe potential barriers and navigating all the websites and everything else?
Well, I think that has to be done at the local level, because there's a lot of VA facilities, and so I would encourage the individual to have a contact with their faculty, their academic faculty advisor, who would reach out to VA nursing leadership and to work with them to develop a project or to look for employment when they have completed their degree. So I think it's really at that level. We could help facilitate introductions, but I think there should be the partnership from the academic to the local VA setting. Sheila, anything else you would want to add to that?
No, I completely agree with you, Kathy, because many of these decisions are made locally depending on the budgets of the facilities. But one other thing I don't think we mentioned, and I wanted to let you know, Office of Nursing Services does make every attempt to support new nurses or new researchers as they come into our system. In fact, one of the things that we do that Kathy is in charge of is offering a grant writing workshop. So for novice nurses who are writing their first NRI, we provide a week-long workshop that is faculty provided are people who have been previously funded through the mechanism and very well know the system. And they assist with writing your first grant. So, and we've had reasonable success with that program. I mean, obviously a lot of it depends on the individual, but I think last I counted, we've had close to 20 million, Kathy, funded in graduates of that workshop?
Yes, correct.
Another question that that we see that, especially in our most recent reports from scholars and students that are trying to develop and navigate the IRB process of the VA and their institution. Any tips on that? Do you have anything on the website or kind of tricks of the trade to help them navigate the IRB?
I think the most important thing that people need to understand about the VA is, and that process, is it isn't just the Institutional Review Board. There's also a Research and Development Committee that oversees all types of research. So there's an animal committee, a bench committee, as well as the human IRB committee. So you have to go through the IRB and get all of that cleared up, but then you still are not free to go until the Research and Development Committee has blessed it. And what they are looking for is to ensure that you do have the resources that you need to successfully complete your project. So being aware that there's a two-step system to that is very important. Unfortunately, it is not a consistent system because some places the IRB is at the academic affiliate and the R&D committee is at the VA.
Okay.
So there has to be good communication all the way around to make sure that you've, checked all the boxes for everybody. Now, some places, like I say, the IRB is also at the VA, so it's a little less complicated. But make very sure that you have worked with the program manager for the IRB and to get to know the R&D administrator, because they will be the people who can help you make sure that you've done everything you need to do, especially if you're managing a school IRB and a VA R&D committee. But some people have mistakenly gotten that IRB letter and said, oh, finally, and off they go. And then they're in trouble because they didn't wait for R&D approval. As far as the IRB itself, I think it's very, very important that you be aware of the extreme safety that we put around our data. There's also a review that is required by our information security officer as well as our privacy officer. We are very, very protective of veteran data, not because we don't want to share, but simply because we do not want there to be any opportunity for somebody to be too casual with their managing of data so that it's released out into the public inappropriately. So things like thumb drives that we all take for granted or using the cloud to store information, that is not possible in the VA for those high security reasons. I know it's different and it's weird when you're not used to it, but when you remember, if you were a soldier, would you want your data available for just anybody to look at? It becomes a little bit more understandable.
Yeah, and this is Kathy. I just wanted to stress that each VA facility has its own IRB mechanisms and the R&D, as Sheila explained. There is a VA central IRB, but that is only for VA cooperative study funded protocols. So, and that they are usually multi-site. So, otherwise it's done at the local level. And for student projects, of course, they all have to go through their academic IRB.
The other question I have, with all the research that's being nurse-led in the VA, what are your mechanisms for promoting and disseminating some of your work? Because you're at so many different sites and there's benefit across your system. And also I think that the VA is in some ways innovative in some of your approaches and there's benefit to probably on the civilian side as well. So it makes me think of the Mission Act and our veterans being able to go to other sites for care. What are some of the strategies for dissemination of research from the VA?
Well, we certainly, the individual, we certainly encourage them to present and publish their findings. We have on our internet, we spotlight our nurse researchers and their accomplishments. And we have a newsletter that goes out through VA where we do also highlight that. So they are highlighted on various websites. And we certainly encourage and support the publications and presentations.
Yeah, and depending on how you're working, there are, so for example, in our geriatric research education clinical centers or GRECs, the mental health, same thing, MyRECs, there are actually writers who can assist with that process. We do not have the capacity for that in the Office of Nursing Services, I regret to say, but there are facility-based supports that can be available to you as far as promoting that. Obviously, there are also poster opportunities. We recommend that in your budget for your grants that you include some dissemination work for funding for that, because travel money gets a little bit tighter in some of the facilities than in others.
Do we have any more questions? No, we have no more questions in chat. And we have no more questions on our side of the camp at Jonas. But I want to thank you both for joining us today. This has been very informative. As always, I thank you for our collaboration, and I look forward to our ongoing work. We have quite a few scholars coming to the October conference, about 47, and look forward to disseminating the work that they're doing and sharing that back up the pipeline with you guys.
That's exciting. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I want to thank Kathy for joining me on the call today. Like I said, I wanted to make sure that everybody learned her voice and face as well as mine. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.